that's happened with the COVID.
Yep, I totally agree.
Are we the only two that are in so far, or any of the rest of the people here?
I hadn't heard anybody else other than you and I.
I think we have a quorum.
Hadn't heard.
I think we have a quorum.
Hadn't heard.
I think we have a quorum. Jeffrey, can you turn the sound off?
Hadn't heard.
I think we have a quorum. Jeffrey, can you turn the sound off?
Hadn't heard.
I think we have a quorum. Jeffrey, can you turn the sound off?
Hadn't heard.
I think we have a quorum. Jeffrey, can you turn the sound off?
Hadn't heard.
I think we have a... Okay, let's try this again. Okay.
That was pretty incredible, Josh.
I'm impressed.
It was sometimes you don't like to hear your own voice. That's especially true in an echo.
Oh, is it?
You could be a record producer.
I thought that was a dream come true for you, Josh.
We are still waiting on...
If this current gig doesn't work out.
We're still waiting on two members, but it's 2:03, so we'll go ahead and get started. And by the time I finish with my beginning speech, will have joined us. So,
okay.
With that, Mr. Chairman, you want to gavel us in?
That sounds good. Good afternoon. The Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment is hereby called to order for its regularly scheduled meeting of August 26, 2020. My name is Tim Rainey. I'm chairman of the board. Mr. Josh Whitehead serves as secretary of the board. Mr. Whitehead, may I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Baker.
Here.
Mr. Claybrook.
Here.
Mr. Jackson.
Here.
Mr. Malazri.
Here.
And Mr. Chairman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment is the oldest appointed governmental body in Memphis and Shelby County. We were established in 1925. The board hears appeals from the administration of the zoning ordinance, requests for variances from the zoning ordinance, and other requests as articulated by local zoning laws adopted pursuant to the enabling legislation. The 8 members of the board are appointed, 4 by the mayor of Memphis and 4 by the mayor of Shelby County, with confirmation by the Memphis City Council or Shelby County Board of Commissioners. We serve without remuneration. At this time, I'd like to swear in the staff. If you'd all raise your hand, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you. May I get a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting?
So
Moved. John Jack.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Second, Portia Scarlett.
Okay, well, thank you I didn't ask for a second, and I should have. I apologize. So, being moved and seconded, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Mr. Secretary, please provide us a secretary's report, if there is one this month, and then explain the procedure for today's meeting.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, and obviously, as you just heard, Ms. Trass Skurlock has joined us.
Okay.
The procedure for this afternoon will be as follows. Let me get to my script. I will introduce each case as listed on the agenda. Copies of the agenda are found on the board's website as well as the division's YouTube page. For each case, staff with the Office of Planning and Development will give a presentation containing site plans, photographs, and maps of the subject property. These will all be streamed on our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/C, as in channel, /Division of Planning and Development. And for all those listening, you can view the materials streamed on our YouTube page, but just be aware there's a 3-second delay. So once you are unmuted to provide testimony, just be sure you mute your YouTube video. After the conclusion of the staff's presentation, the applicant will present his or her case. After that, the board will then hear from those speakers in support of the application, followed by those speakers in opposition to the application. Under our rules of procedure, the applicant will be given 5 minutes with an additional 5 minutes that either he or she can take or supporters. That will be followed by opposition, which will have 10 minutes, followed by a 2-minute rebuttal period. So basically 10 minutes with a 2-minute rebuttal. Speakers were asked to provide their name by a deadline yesterday, and we do have a couple cases where we have opposition. If after the conclusion of both the support and opposition and rebuttal, the body would like to hear additional testimony, a 2/3 vote is required to hear that additional testimony, and at that point, the chair is obligated under our rules to give both sides an equal amount of time. All motions made by this body will be made in the affirmative. The private acts governing this body require at least 5 members to approve an application regardless of the number of board members present. So at this point, that would be a 5 out of 6 vote. The board may also vote to hold a case for no longer than 90 cumulative days or in segments of 30 individual tranches. All section numbers that we refer to come from the Memphis and Shelby County Unified Development Code, which was adopted by the City Council and the County Commission in August of 2010 and made effective on January 1, 2011. I will introduce the entire UDC, the code, to make it part of today's record, thus dispensing with the reading of individual sections. The board is vested with the power to act on these cases under the provisions of Chapter 9.22 of the UDC. Mr. Chairman, I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order, all applicants have been notified of this hearing, and all other notice requirements have been fulfilled as required by the UDC.
Very good. Mr. Whitehead, do you mind giving me that YouTube channel again real quick?
Yes, sir. It's youtube.com, and then there's a slash, the one that's underneath the question mark.
Gotcha.
C, and then do that slash again after your C, and then Division of Planning and Development, all together. You probably also could, at this point, now that we've got about 8 meetings under our belt, search for Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment. But
one would think that I could
way.
do that, but I was not very successful, but I'm also not very good at the internet. So, all right, perfect. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Baker.
I clicked on the link at the top of the agenda and got it that way. But I have a technical question to Mr. Whitehead.
Okay.
And I probably should know this, but I'm confused. So I have it pulled up on my laptop, the Board of Adjustment meeting that I can watch. And to hear the staff, do I have to unmute my laptop or not? I have it on mute so that, there won't be that feedback and everything. But do I have
if you're on, anybody that's on this call really can just put the YouTube on mute. The YouTube sound is really for those not on the call and those of us who have to type the minutes out for,
Got it.
future consultation.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. At this point, the board will establish a consent agenda. To establish the consent agenda, the Secretary will call out each eligible case. If any members of the board or the staff would object to a case being placed on consent, he or she should do so by a show of hands when the Secretary reads that case. Or with no hands, please say something. Once the consent agenda is established, the board will vote on all cases placed on the consent agenda as a whole. We will not hold individual public hearings on each case. Mr. Secretary, which items on our agenda today are eligible to be placed on consent?
And again, Mr. Chairman, if any board member wants to hear these cases, just let me know either at the conclusion of me calling out that individual case or at the conclusion of the entire list of cases. So as we look through the agenda, we begin with item number 2. That's docket BOA 2043 at 2471 Broad. That is the use variance request to allow a gas station, at least part of a site of a gas station within the residential zoning district. And Mr. Chairman, the point of this hold, which would be the code only allows this body to hold a case for 3 months, and this would be the third of those 3 months. The purpose is there is hope both among the plaintiff, the neighboring property owner to the east, and the defendant, the applicant, that Chancery Court will opine on the existence of an easement, which quite frankly is more likely a prescriptive easement than anything else. A prescriptive easement follows the adverse possession laws of Tennessee, where if you are open and notorious in your traveling above someone and on top of someone else's property, you have established an easement. Well, that easement obviously can greatly affect the site plan on this property. So there's hope that by this time next month that Chancery Court will have opined on that matter. If not, this body will have a few choices at its disposal. Jeffrey, is that us? No. Mr. Chairman, there's a sound that I hear, and I think it's
Hello?
Only the board members are unmuted, so board members, check your phone. I think you're getting a phone call. Okay, I think that took care of it. Number 2, again, in a month, assuming that Chancery Court hasn't made a decision on the existence of an easement through this property, this body will have a few decisions at its disposal. Number 1 would be to reject the case, because without the knowledge of the existence of the easement, a board member doesn't feel comfortable with approving anything. Approve the case with whatever site plan alterations be done administratively. Or 3, ask pretty please that the applicant withdraw the case, which quite frankly of the 3 would be the cleanest. Until and unless we have some clear indication on that easement. Number 3, Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting an additional hold. So like number 2, if this survives the consent agenda, it will be held for 30 days. That is docket BOA 2059, located at 1502 Harbert. And that is that request. This has been held once before for the swimming pool in a side yard. Number 5, Mr. Chairman, there's a theme here. Number 5 is consentable, but again, as a 1-month hold. That's docket BOA 2068, located at 528 East Parkway North. This is a variance to allow the continued use, the retroactive approval of a parking lot and the continued use of that parking lot within a required front yard. The applicant on this case would like to present a revised site plan to the body and was not able to produce that in time. And finally, on our consent as a hold cases, agenda item number 6, which is docket BOA 2069, located at 2655 Broad Avenue. This is a request to allow the continued use of a few nonconforming signs at that location. Going to number 7, this would be consent as approval. That's docket BOA 2071, located at 316 to 324 South Front. The applicant is CNTC Development LLC. The use district is the South Main SM zoning district, and the request is a variance from 722E2A to allow an apartment building with up to 165 units. I think I misspoke, Mr. Chairman. Number 8 is a consent as a 1-month hold. That is docket BOA 2072, located at 4457 Normandy. Mr. Chairman, this has a, not unlike agenda item number 3, I believe, 2, this has a simultaneous case in Chancery Court. The Chancery Court is, within the next month, perhaps hearing a request from this appellant on his request for an injunction. There is hope that he and the appellee, the property owner, come to some sort of settlement with regard to this accessory dwelling unit. I believe, though, rather than it going away in 1 month, what the appellant may want to do is have this body memorialize the ruling of the Chancery Court, assuming the settlement is finalized between now and a month from now. Agenda item number 9, that is consent as approval with one amendment, and I'll get to that in a moment. This is docket BOA 2073, located at 3000 Claudette Road. The applicant is the Shelby County Board of Education. The use district is the R6 Single Family District, and the request is a variance from sub-item 496E2HI to allow an electronic message board to be on a road that is not an arterial or collector. And Mr. Chairman, after the staff report went out on this case, the school board contacted us, and they are concerned about the requirement found in the code to irrigate signs of a certain size, and this sign would be barely above that size requirement, and they would prefer to have drought-resistant landscaping and to not irrigate the sign. So that would involve an additional condition on this case and a few more that we'll get to in a moment. A condition number 4 that would read, the requirement for irrigation, or, if not irrigated, a reduction of sign area required pursuant to paragraph 496M3 and sub-item 497D2B12 of the Unified Development Code shall not be required. So we would waive the requirement to irrigate this sign. Agenda item number 10, that's docket BOA 2074, located at 427 Meadvale Street. The applicant is our oft-seen representative, but as property owner, Nathan Bix. The use district is the R6 Residential Single Family District within a planned development, and the request is a variance pursuant to subsection 329F to allow a screened-in porch within a platted rear setback. And that is consent with no additional conditions or any other kind of strange notes. Number 11 is docket BOA 2075, located at 5292 Banbury Avenue. The applicant, again, is the Shelby County Board of Education. The use district is the R10 Single Family District. The request is a variance from sub-item 49E2EHI, again, to allow an electronic message board on a road not classified as an arterial or collector. And Mr. Chairman, the note on this is the same as the note on number 9, that if this survives on the consent calendar as approval, we would recommend the addition of a friendly condition number 4. We're in the home stretch, Mr. Chairman. Agenda item number 12 is docket BOA 2076, located at 3139 Poplar. The applicant is LPI Memphis Incorporated. The use district is the CMU1 Commercial Mixed Use District. The request is a variance from item 4915F1C to allow the continued use of a nonconforming sign. Number 13, docket BOA 2077, located at 1750 Alsea. Again, the applicant is the Shelby County Board of Education. The use district is the R6 Single Family District, and the request is from sub-item 496E2HI, a variance from that section to allow an electronic message board with the friendly condition number 4 I articulated earlier. Number 14, docket BOA 2078, located at 8601 The Island Drive, an address that I'm sure requires explanation to Amazon and everyone else. The applicant is Ed and Nancy Barnett, represented by Tim DeAgostino. The use district is the EMP Light Industrial District, but with a residential plan development. That's 86347 CC. And the request is a variance pursuant to subsection 329F to allow 2 additions to encroach into that platted rear setback. And finally, agenda item number 15 is docket BOA 2079, located at 1531 Carr. The applicant is Andrew I. Rowland III. The use district is a residential single-family district within the historic overlay, the Central Gardens Landmarks District, and the request is a variance from 272D1A to allow an accessory dwelling unit. And Mr. Chairman, after we hear whether or not any of these cases need to be amended or removed, I'll do a quick summary.
Okay. So does anyone on the board wish to hear any of these cases? Hearing none. So you want to say it again before? I think I have the motion if you want me to make it, or at least suggest it, Mr. Whitehead. So please. I'd like to see if we can get a motion to, on consent, case number 2 is a 1-month hold, case number 3 is a 1-month hold, case number 5 is a 1-month hold, 6 is a 1-month hold, 7 is consent on approval, 8 is a 1-month hold, 9 is approval with modified condition, 10 is as approval, 11 is approval with modified condition, 12 is approval, 13 is approval with modified condition, and 14 as approval, and 15 as approval.
Perfect.
Would someone make that motion?
So moved. John Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Is there a second?
Second, Mary Baker. Second.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Baker. I would like to remind the board that by voting on the consent agenda, he or she affirms that he or she has read the staff report and is in full agreement with the conditions. Mr. Secretary, may I get a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Ms. Baker.
Aye.
Mr. Claybrook.
Yes.
Mr. Jackson.
Yes.
Mr. Malazri.
Yes.
Ms. Gerlach.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
That's 6 ayes.
All right. Thank you very much. So if you are on the call with us for any case other than 1, 4, and 16, you have either been approved or held as requested. With that, Mr. Schaefer, will you call the first case that we're going to hear on the regular agenda?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Item number 1 is a rehearing. It's docket BOA 2051, located at 2432 Summer Avenue. The applicant is Townsend Development, LLC. The use districts are CMU 3 and RU 1. And the request is to rehear a request for a use variance from Section 252 to allow the continued use of a commercial structure. And the note here is this body approved this request for a rehearing on July 22nd after the original matter was rejected on June 24th.
Okay, very good. Is Ms. Reeves here to talk to us?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Cindy Reeves, SR Consulting, 5909 Shelby Oaks Drive, Suite 200.
Mr. Chairman, Mary
Okay.
Baker.
Yes, Ms. Baker.
I'd like to hear a staff report on this item. Can we
Okay,
get
yeah,
that?
that's fine. Oh, yeah, I was
Okay,
just making sure the applicant was here.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, no, not a problem. This is the most confusing thing we've ever done. So, so thank you, Ms. Reeves. I'll go ahead and swear you in, but then we'll hear from the staff. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Skinner, could you give us a staff report on this to remind us all what's going on?
Absolutely. Lucas Skinner with the Office of Planning and Development. Can everyone hear me pretty well?
Yes,
I
sir.
hear you. Oh, okay. Never mind.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure. Well, good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. So like Josh said, this is a rehearing for use variance for the Lucienne Theater at 2432 Summer Avenue. Just to sort of refresh everyone's memories, this is sort of a puzzle piece kind of shaped lot. It's a split zoning with most of the building in a CMU 3. district, and then part of the back of the building and the northern portion of the parcel in RU1. So therefore, the use variance is therefore to allow this structure to continue commercial uses throughout the entire lot. There have been a few changes since the first hearing that I've added to my staff report. Mainly, I just wanted to note that I added a few conclusions I'm sure that you've read through. And then I also added a condition number 5 that is restricting some of the uses. We also attempted to quantify the amount of building that reaches from the CMU3 district into the RU1 district. And we noticed that it was roughly 28.9 feet. Is the amount for the back of that building in the RU1 zone. And I just wanted to note that staff feels that the added condition 5 that we worked on with the representative and the applicant, restricting uses should help protect the building from any undesired uses. So that was all I really wanted to bring up. I'm available for any questions.
I had a question real quick, Mr. Skinner. And I can't remember if we talked about this last time. So the zoning, just a straight line across there that separated the RU1 from the commercial. Do you know when that line was placed in that position versus when the building was built?
Yeah, and Ms. Reeves did a really good job sort of going through that sort of the historic aspect of all of the different zonings that it's sort of gone through. So if you kind of look through her affidavit towards the end of the report, it was around the 50s when we noticed. So the building was around way earlier than the 50s, but it was around the 50s when the zoning line it was 53. Yeah, so she noted in from 53 to then in 54 that it sort of changes and makes the split zoning.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Chairman, I have...
Yes, ma'am.
I want to preface this by saying that I am in complete favor of the intent of saving and reusing this wonderful old theater. I don't think anybody could be any more in favor of that than I am. And I understand that other board members feel that way too. And so there's a tendency to want to approve this application. But I'm going to tell you, I'm still confused about what is being permitted by this application. So I think I'm going to start out just by asking this staff some questions about that, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right, here I go. Mr. Skinner or Mr. Whitehead, whoever wants to answer it, what uses will be permitted on this property if this application is approved?
So it would be any use that's permitted by right in the CMU3 zone, other than the uses that we excluded in condition 5, which include convenience stores, gas pumps, several vehicle, service repair, sales, and Josh can go further into that. But as a general, it's most CMU3 uses, and then other than the ones that we have conditioned that are not allowed on that site.
Okay. What about a nightclub or a bar? That it's under the category of indoor amusement in the Unified Development Code, and it appears to be permitted in CMU3. So that would be a permitted use, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. What uses are permitted on the parcel fronting Faxon? Are all those same uses permitted there too? I don't see any differentiation in this report that the front part of the building is allowed this, but the back part that fronts Faxon is not allowed that. What is permitted on that parcel if this gets approved?
Well, so that's what the applicant is asking for, is to allow the commercial uses that are allowed in the front, 3/4 of the building to be permitted in the rear of the building. So currently, as it stands, with being in the RU1 district, it would mainly be just residential uses, plus a few things that are allowed in those residential districts, but mainly for residential uses. And so that's why the applicant was asking for this use variance, is to allow the commercial uses that we sort of just went through to be allowed in the rear of the building on the part that is currently RU1.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you again, what is permitted on that large parcel that had a parking lot? I mean, there's kind of the remnants of a parking lot there now. What would be permitted on that property? Not the property that the line goes through the building. I'm completely on board with that. If that were all this was about, I probably wouldn't even raise a question. But our concern is about the big. I'm talking to the staff right now, if that's okay.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Hello?
I mean, it would, as it stands, it would just be residential uses, anything, that's allowed in the RU1 district.
Okay, so I'm gonna let that go for now, but I'm gonna come back to it. One question that I have for you, Mr. Skinner, also is at the front of this report, you say that the request is a use variance from Section 2.5.2 to continue the use of a commercial structure. Is that what went out on the notice? Is that
yes.
when you sent the notice out? Is that what you told them? Okay. So, I mean,
yes.
If I'm a citizen, I get that notice. I'm thinking you're only talking about the building. You're not really talking about, and you seem to think that you're not really talking about that either. And I mean, I go to the support letter that's on page 29. That was the Summer Avenue Merchants Association, and apparently there were some residents that sent in letters too. If you read that letter, that's what she thinks is being approved here. Only moving that line, kicking that line that little bit at the back of that structure, but not approving those same uses on the parking lot. But of course, if it's included in the boundaries of what's approved, to me, that would be permitted. And so I just to go on this thing about how everybody's confused about this, I'll have to make a point about the comprehensive plan comments on page 14, where they actually say that the property is being converted to CMU3. But that's not the case, is it? This is a variance application. Okay. No site plan. I don't understand why there's not a site plan with this application. I would feel better about approving it if there were a site plan that clearly showed that Faxon property is to be only accessory parking. But as it is before us today, there isn't anything that shows that. And condition number 4 actually states that the existing chain link fence may be used to satisfy the requirement for landscaping along Faxon. So I'm going to quit, and I'm going to move to, well, let me say two other things. One is process matters, because if this can be confused with zoning, then the difference between the process with the Board of Adjustment, the one meeting, you get the notice 10 days ahead of time, it goes to the court after that, versus a rezoning which would be signs posted on both sides. It would be a neighborhood meeting in advance of Land Use Control Board. There would be 2 meetings. The process would go on for a much longer time. And so there's really no comparison between the two. And yet, to me, it's still confusing which one this is more like. And a Board of Adjustment approval is forever. No amount of future neighborhood planning and comprehensive rezoning can change what we approve today. And that is in contrast with if the property were rezoned, then if this neighborhood does get back on its feet, which I think it will, and they wanted to come in and do some neighborhood planning and some down zoning, if it was zoned, it could be changed. If it's a Board of Adjustment approval, it can't. I think it's important that we guard against allowing the Board of Adjustment becoming an alternative to the normal through Land Use Control Board and the City Council. So, hello?
You're still there, Mary. I think it's somebody's got some call beeping in.
I think the call's coming in again. Okay, so I want to make some motions then. And again, I'm just saying most of this because I'm worried about this kind of application becoming a model. I'd rather be talking about all this on something that we all don't want instead of having to talk about it on something that we all do want. And so it makes it ever more stressful for me to do it. But I feel like I have to. Okay, so I make a motion, and I have several motions. I don't know if you want me to make them all at one time or...
Hold on a second. Procedurally, Josh, is it time? Can we just make a motion at any time, or do we need to go through the hearing first?
We need to complete our public hearing, and I don't think it's begun yet. We have a person, obviously, representing the owner. We have the owner, and I think we have an opponent on the line too.
Okay, all right. So let's hold those motions, if you will. But we'll definitely come back to that, okay?
Okay, I apologize.
No, not a problem. All right, Ms. Reeves, would you like to speak? We've already sworn you in, so would you like to speak with us about this? You have 10 minutes.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Townsend has made a large investment in this area and plans to continue to support and encourage new development for this area, and he is invested in it and plans to continue to invest in this area. The survey on page 11 is, I think, what they thought was a site plan, and if a site plan is what Ms. Baker would like to see, we can do a site plan. That's not an issue. The back parking lot can remain a parking lot. That's the only that's the only use that we want to use that for, is for parking, and we can restrict this that remain parking for the Lucian building. If you'll look at my letter of intent on page 23 and 24, on page 24, I added that if we add additional RU1 property, that a plan development will be filed. If you look at page 25, in 1922, which the building was already built according to the registrar's office, or was being built, the property was in the county. It was not even in the city limits. Then in 1953, the zoning atlas correctly showed his property and the building being in commercially zoned area. So then in 1954, the reason the zoning map changed and it straightened out that line, which then 1954 on put the back portion of that building in residential zoning, which it should not have done. The 53 map should have never changed because of the building being in that zoning, in that area. So you also, 1957, there is a final plat for the First National Bank subdivision in which they clearly show the building was still there in 1957, and it shows the additional land that they had bought.
Ms. Reed, Cindy?
Yeah.
Cindy, can I put you
Yes,
on
sir.
pause? We seem to have an errant phone on the line. Jeffrey, can you identify that? No, it's not. Okay. It's gone away, Cindy. Sorry.
Yeah, I was hearing it also, and it's definitely not on my end. My phone is muted
Okay.
or on silent.
Well,
Excuse me.
what can we do if somebody calls us during this hearing? The thought just occurred to me. I hope it's not my phone, but I really don't know. I hadn't seen a call come in.
If you see one, you can ignore the call.
Yes, you just push the button.
Ringing. Yeah. Okay.
You can put your phone on Do Not Disturb while you're on, if you're on iPhone, I know. You put on Do Not Disturb and it won't let any other calls outside of while you're on the meeting. You can go to Settings and then click on Do Not Disturb.
Cindy, we put your clock on pause, so your time is not being used right now, but I think you can continue.
Okay. 1957, you have the subdivision that was done on the adjacent property, and it clearly shows the theater and the accessory parking for the theater. As I said, we can add a condition that parking lot remains to serve for the building. We plan on doing nothing with the parking lot. That can remain, RU1, including accessory parking to the Lucian Theater building. So we do not have a problem with that. Let me go back to some of my notes, excuse me. I was on a roll. But we feel that the zoning map in 53 was correct. In 54, it changed, and that forever put the rear of that building in a different zone, which should never have happened. We just want to correct that now. If they add additional RU1 property to be used for commercial uses, then they will file a plan development at that time. But we would like the board to please approve this application and condition it as discussed. We in any other conditions, we're in agreement, and we'd like the board to please approve this application. He plans to do an event center which has a lot of accessory uses, and he wants to repurpose the building. He has no plans of tearing the building down. He plans to improve the building just like he did the home that he purchased behind it. That, he wants to make an investment in this area, and it's just unfortunate that in 1954 the zoning line was changed, and whoever changed the zoning line, maybe it was the Office of Planning and Development, never looked at the aerial to see that building was being split with its zoning. And we just feel that this is the way that we want to go for right now. And if additional property is required, then yes, well-thought-out plan development will be filed and go through the channels that it needs to go through. We feel that for just this small portion of the building to continue to be used as part of the building, then we would like the whole building to be able to be utilized. Can I save the rest of my time for rebuttal, please?
You can. Are there any questions for Ms. Reeves right now?
I've got a question for Josh.
Okay, go ahead, Carson.
Josh, can you? All right, sorry, hold on.
We're going to mute you.
Josh, so on the zoning line, Josh, do you have any research or know what happened, why this was done like this in 54?
Unfortunately, Mr. Claybrook, the modern Office of Planning and Development was created in 1955 as the Memphis and Shelby County Planning Commission, and we do in fact have files from that point onward, but not from before that. Now, the Board of Adjustment is different because it was staffed off and on by a different agency and a different department. So we do have y'all's records back to the beginning of zoning-dom, but not the Planning Commission's files. It appears, there's two ways to look at that change from 1953 to 1954. One is, and the one that we're adopting out of an abundance of caution, is that the planning staff, which I think numbered one person at the time, Robert Fredericks, the planning staff purposely straightened out the zoning line, the commercial zoning line along Summer, in an effort to maybe purposely make anything outside of that line non-conforming. So eventually, in 1,000 years, the commercial uses would shrink down within that area. The other, perhaps more probable answer is Mr. Fredericks screwed up. And in 1954, he just made the line straight. But like I said, since 1954, that line has been where it is today. So as the city council, through numerous reapprovals of zoning, have, if nothing else, even if it was a screw-up, kind of memorialized that line and made it much more concrete than perhaps it was initially in 1954. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions of Ms. Reeves or of staff? All right, hearing none. Ms. Reeves, I have you reserving 4 minutes, so you'll have a total of 6 minutes in rebuttal.
Thank you.
At that point, we'll move to the opposition. Do we have the opposition on the line?
Yes, we have Ms. Raina Morgan, and she has been unmuted. Ms. Morgan, you're on the line.
Good afternoon. My name is Raina Morgan. I'm a resident in the Saxon McConnell area, and I just had a couple of questions.
Hey, hold on 1 second. Hold on. Could you give your name and address, or I guess just your address for the record, and let me swear you in real quick?
Yes, sir. My name is Raina Morgan. My address is 2383 Saxon Avenue.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. All right. You have 10 minutes.
Okay. I don't guess I'll take 10 minutes, but I just had a couple of follow-up comments to what Ms. Baker was saying and to Cindy. I've lived in this area. My mom and I both own properties on the corner of Saxon and McConnell, and I have 2 properties right here behind the Family Dollar. So we, as a family and as residents to this area for over 3 decades, we are particularly concerned about what is going to happen to the neighborhood because we are here every day. One of the things that I noticed during the conversation was it seems like there are a couple of different issues here with zoning, of course, because you're going to bring traffic on that backside towards Saxon. And I've looked at the staff report. I've reviewed all the information. I was actually on the last call. But my question is, I'm not really seeing a whole lot of documentation on what the planned usage is, because I believe that in turn would help determine what the actual purpose of that back part that we're talking about rezoning would actually be and what that looks like. So I do agree that we need some sort of site plan, and I was kind of wondering also about, will there, I know, I think Cindy mentioned something that you all could have clear documentation that it'll be reserved as R1 and it'll be, designated to parking for that area. But my thought is, and I noticed that Lucas noted in his staff report that there are certain terms that the applicant would not be able to use it for, like palm reading or whatever those things that were listed on the page. But I still don't have a clear picture as to what the actual plan is. And I've been on a couple of other calls before, so I know that typically when a person invests as much money as, I can't remember his name right off, has invested into it, that there will be some sort of visual or some sort of actual documentation to support what their ideas are, versus just allowing it to be anything except the suggested things that Lucas noted in his staff report. So, I mean, we already have, of course, we wouldn't want another gas station and all that type of stuff there. No more convenience stores, because summer is full of convenience stores, vehicles and parts. Of course, I mean, the things that he has noted as would be exclusions are obvious. Like, it wouldn't even make sense to even try to do that and recoup your investment as a person that's looking to preserve the historic aspect of this neighborhood and particularly that building. But I would just like to see additional information on what the vision is for the property, because I've seen all the layouts of the previous, maps and all that type of stuff, the old dilapidated building in there, but there's nothing providing some sense of assurance that it won't be a furniture store or it won't be, or something else that's not really viable to this community. And that's pretty much all I had. I just had those couple of points.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the opposition?
This is Bill Townsend. I do.
Okay. Josh, that's fine, right? Or no? No.
No.
I don't think we can do that, can we, Josh? Yeah, we
did at one time allow cross-examination of witnesses, but we've ended that several decades ago.
Well, yeah, I'm not trying to...
Mr. Townsend, just wait until it's your turn to talk again, okay?
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Are there any questions from the board or staff of Ms. Townsend? I'm sorry, not Ms. Townsend, the opposition. All right, hearing none, thank you, ma'am, for joining us. At this point, and there's no more opposition, correct, Josh?
That's correct.
Okay. At this point, we have 6 minutes for the applicant to talk if they would like to. So if Mr. Townsend wants to say something, I just need to swear you in if you'll give your name and address for the record.
Yes, William Best Townsend, 651 South Belvedere, Memphis, 38104.
Okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Great. Okay. First off, Ms. Morgan, we have not met yet. I hope to meet you at some point. I totally appreciate all your comments. One thing that I've been looking at for that neighborhood is I think it needs a neighborhood association of everyone that is there. I do know, and no matter how this vote goes today, it's going to go whatever. I do know that Ms. Baker is involved with a group called Neighborhood Preservation, Inc. here in Memphis. And Ms. Baker, I may reach out to you separate from whatever happens today to discuss how to strengthen the voice of that entire neighborhood. I was talking to Mr. Skinner. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, what?
I said awesome.
Okay, so I was talking to Mr. Skinner recently, and because I read through the Memphis 3.0 plan, and I understand most of it. I don't understand a lot of the the terms, specific terms, I know I'm going to mess those up. One issue, I think that neighborhood, if you call it the Facts of McConnell, there's no name on a map for the neighborhood. It used to be part of Binghamton. It was split off from Binghamton a while ago, it appears. But if you look at the Memphis 3.0 plan, the intersection of North Parkway, East Parkway, Trezevant, and Summer, each one of those corners is in a different district. The southwest corner is where Overton Park is downtown. The northwest corner is, I can't remember, I think it's the North District. The Jackson District is the neighborhood you live in, Ms. Morgan, and the southeast corner is actually in the University District. I think the neighborhood there needs to become stronger to have more of a voice about what happens in general. Basically, no one owns that intersection, which is one reason I think it's not getting a lot of attention. Okay? Now, let me just address where I see going with this building. Okay? I think I mentioned at the last meeting, okay, I moved to Memphis when I was 6 years old. My father was a football coach at Memphis State. Okay? My mother got her master's degree at Memphis State, and then she became a school teacher. We lived on what is now the University of Memphis campus in a great, fantastic old house that the school tore down and built the Fogelman Business Building. We then moved up to Hopper Avenue, another home that was fantastic. The university owned it. And, of course, that got torn down, okay, and turned into a parking lot. So my earliest childhood memories of Memphis have all been torn down. I love old buildings, okay? So I don't like tearing down old buildings. And this is just, I'm not going to tear this building down no matter where we go with this whole thing. I was very fortunate. My father ended up working at Shelby State, and my mother was a public school teacher at Southside, which is now torn down, Hamilton and Mitchell. And so I have a very different experience here in Memphis than a lot of other people. My father became very ill and died. Okay, my mother had to put my brother and I through college. I ended up with a scholarship at Rhodes. Okay, I'd never spent much time in Midtown till I ended up at Rhodes, and I used to work at Steinwart on Summer Avenue. So I used to go back and forth in that whole little corridor right there for 3 years. So when the theater came up for sale, I made some inquiries and said, you know what, that thing is going to get torn down. Okay, if we can get the right price on that, I'm going to buy it. And somebody said, well, what do you want to do with it? I said, it doesn't matter. Okay, it will help the neighborhood and it will help Rhodes. Okay, so in terms of what I want to do with it, I thought of a lot of different things. I thought about putting a bar at the front of it and an event space at the back. You know, I've thought about just making the whole thing an event space. I talked to one person about maybe we make it into condos. You know, that they said no. You know, my vision for this has evolved, you know, because then what happens? COVID. So there's no events. I can't put money into a space for an event center, you know. So I totally get everybody's concerns. I want to hear what Ms. Baker has to say, especially at the back lot. If we want to restrict that to be parking as is with better landscaping, and just so everyone knows, I'm in discussions now to put a beautiful iron fence and a gate, make it look really pretty, you know. But I looked at the staff report, and I think that back parking lot could also be some kind of housing within the limits of an anchor accelerator neighborhood. I don't know exactly what that is. Is it 2 or 3 single houses? Is it 5, you know, more affordable housing, you know, townhouses? I'm not sure. Anything I did like that, I know, according to Ms. Reeves, I need to do a bigger planned use development, which is fine. You know, if we just want to restrict it to parking lot, you know, and the reality is it's the back 3.9 feet of the structure is out of code. You know, if this doesn't pass, I get it. You know, we'll just keep going on the process. You know, and let me make one comment on that. I grew up here. I moved to California to go to school. I watched the process in California. Your organization is very, very efficient. And you may not feel that way, and I know you probably get attacked, okay? But things like this in California can go on for decades. So the very fact that you can speedily handle things is fantastic. So, you know, that's all I want to say is I'm not sure what we're going to do with it because I don't know when does COVID go away? When do we think an event center should open? I don't know. You know, I do know I'd like to open a retail store at the front, you know, because I think jobs are important. And I do think, Ms. Morgan, you live right there. You know that there's the drug dealers and the pimps and everything else that happens and I'd like to clean the neighborhood up for future and current residents, just to make it a better place. So if anybody wants to ask me a question, feel free. I'm more than open. But Mr. Whitehead, I don't know if that's allowed in the process.
All right. Okay, well, that was exactly 6 minutes, so you hit the nail on the head. Are there any questions for Mr. Townsend? Hearing none, I assume you guys are ready to discuss. Ms. Baker, were there some motions you were wanting to make?
Yes, please.
Okay.
First one, I move to add a condition that this variance is revoked if the theater building is demolished. That's the first one.
Okay.
You want me to keep going? Keep going?
Yeah. Why don't we do this, Mary? As I think about it, I've asked you to remove that motion, and let's get this into discussion, and then let's talk about those additional motions. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yep. Well, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's see if we can first get a motion on the floor. I probably should have done that to begin with. That's my fault. A motion to approve BOA case number 1 today as conditioned just by staff. And if we can get that moved and seconded, that we can start discussing it.
So moved. Larson.
Okay, I got a movement. Is there a second?
Second, Mary Baker.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mary. And so, as we start discussion, Mary, I'd love for you to start us off.
I really was happy to hear Ms. Reeves' comments about, and Mr. Townsend's, that they're fine with making sure that back property is labeled a parking lot, and the landscaping that's required will be put in, and the parking stalls and drive aisles and everything that's required of a standard parking lot, that would all be included in the staff report in the plan that is signed off on by Mr. Whitehead and made a part of the record for building permits. I'm happy to hear that, and it goes to much of my concern, and I only wish that I had known all of that in advance, but I didn't. So, anyone else have any comments?
No, I agree with you, Ms. Baker, on that. I think that we ought to maybe think about adding condition number 6 to that effect. That the existing parking lot may only be used as parking. That was going to be my second. May I read it? I think please do.
Okay. Add a condition which states that the property frontage along Faxon Avenue shall only be used as an accessory parking lot to the theater and shall be labeled accessory parking on an approved site plan. The parking lot shall be detailed with parking stalls, drive aisles, and landscaping as required by the Unified Development Code.
Okay. With a friendly amendment, I think that we should add that as condition number 6. And then as condition number 7, will you repeat what you said before we started discussion?
Yes. I make a motion to add a condition that this variance is revoked if the theater building is demolished.
Okay. That seems very reasonable to me as well, and I don't think the applicant would have any problem with that based on how much he wants to save this building. So I would be in favor of that as well, and could add that as a friendly amendment unless there's anybody on the board that opposes such. Hearing none, I think that's
Okay.
added. And go ahead.
Okay, I go ahead and just, condition number 4, I think we all want to remove the condition that says the existing chain link fence would be allowed to satisfy the requirements for landscaping. I think we all have agreed by now, that we want to do that.
That's number 4.
Yeah, and it would take out.
Yeah, and
just
he's
take out
in
the
the process of. Yeah, he's in the process of getting a different fence and was willing to landscape. So that makes sense to me as well. Is there any discussion on that friendly amendment? All right, hearing none. Anything else, Ms. Baker?
No. I was all set to make a motion for a 5-year time limit, but so we could look at it again later. But if it's changed like we're talking about, I would think it would be fine. The only thing that I would mention now is maybe in the condition about the parking lot, maybe we should have in there. I mean, I don't know, and I'll just ask the staff to comment on this. Do we need to also have in there that they can use it for RU1 uses, just to make that clear? As long as they provide adequate parking without it or without using all of it or whatever.
Mr. Chairman, Josh Whitehead, I think that would be a good addition to, condition 6, the end of condition 6 that talks about that parking lot. We may, to just express the intent of the body, to say RU1 uses are permitted on that western parcel, provided all provisions of the code are met. And then that gives direction to condition number 1 that allows slight deviations to the site plan. It kind of makes future staff aware that this body would allow maybe a more significant site plan deviation if it is RU1 uses on that property. I think it provides a good direction to staff, whether it's staff next year or staff 20 years from now.
Okay.
Very good. Are you okay with that, the way he worded that, Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Okay. I was too. Any other comments by by the board on that amendment to the condition 6? Hearing none. Any other comments from Ms. Baker or anyone else?
One other thing, I just want to thank you, everybody involved in this, for sitting through, listening to all of my questions and everything and my motions. I appreciate it very much.
Well, you're most welcome, Ms. Baker. We all need to be comfortable with what we're voting on in these things, and appreciate you speaking up. Any other comments? Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote as on BOA 20-51 as conditioned by staff, including the conditions that were just discussed, 6, 7, and 8. Mr. Whitehead, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir, and you articulated it perfectly, except there is no 8. The third amendment dealt with striking the second sentence of condition 4.
Oh, thank you.
Ms. Garlock?
Yes.
Mr. Malazri?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I find the standards or variances in section 9.22.6 of the UDC are being met, and the case will not be unduly detrimental to the other properties in the vicinity.
That's 6 ayes.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Townsend and Ms. Reeves. You've been approved. Mr. Whitehead, would you call the next case, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. That brings us to agenda item number 4, and I was just notified that we had a person in opposition sign up. They are not with us, so I will defer to you after I read the caption on whether you'd like to see a staff report. But this is agenda item number 4, docket BOA 2067, located at 1330 Stern Lane. The applicant is the Shelby County Board of Education, represented by Jim Williams. The use district is the CA Conservation Agricultural District, and the variance is from 496E2HI to allow a detached sign a detached sign with an electronic message board along a street that is not a collector or arterial.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Whitehead. I would ask the board, we approved 3 other that are pretty much identical to this case as far as these signs in front of the schools. And does anyone need to hear this case since we don't actually have any opposition to hear from today? Hearing none, then I assume that y'all would be okay with putting forth the motion to approve as conditioned with the modified condition that the other ones had to approve BOA 20-67. Can I get a motion for that?
John Jackson, so moved.
All right, thank you, Mr. Jackson. Is there a second?
Parson.
All right.
Second, Portia Phillips.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other discussion? Sorry about that. That was my phone that time. Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote. Mr. Whitehead, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Malazri.
Yes.
Ms. Scarlock.
Yes.
Ms. Baker.
Yes.
Mr.
Faye
Jackson.
Baker? Yes.
Yes. Mr. Jackson.
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I find the standards for variances in section 9.22.6 are being met, and the case will not be unduly detrimental to other properties in the vicinity.
That's 6 ayes.
All right, the case has been approved. Mr. Whitehead, would you call the last case for us today?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. That brings us to agenda item number 16, which is docket BOA 2080, located at 4200 Prescott, or as my mom says, Prescott. The applicant is Gerardo Romero, represented by Luis Romero. The use district is the R8 Residential Single Family District, and the request is a use variance from 252 to allow the raising of horses for 6 additional months.
Okay, I assume the applicant's on the line with us. Do we have any opposition on the line with us today?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. Then let's get let's see here. Mr. Penzis, will you kind of bring us up to speed? I know this is not our first or second, maybe possibly not our third time at Prescott Road. Could you kind of give us the history and tell us what's going on today?
Mr. Penzis has asked that I do this because he's in the control booth that doesn't have a good microphone. Josh Whitehead.
We'll allow it.
Okay, thank you. This has gone to the board, Mr. Chairman, a total of 3 times. Just to take you back to 2016, this was initially rejected by the body. That was BOA 1673. That was followed by an approval 2 years later, about 18 months later. That was BOA 1810, but that approval in 2018 was only for a 2-year period. That 2-year period expired in January, and Mr. Chairman, you may recall that in January of this year, the applicant sought and received an additional 6-month extension. That 6-month extension expired in July, so just last month. This is a 8-acre site. Just to jog everyone's memory, this is on Prescott, just north of Arnold Road and just south of Rains. There is some level of light industrialization to the south and to the east, but in large measure, this portion of Prescott is still very much single-family residential in nature. Unlike many requests that this body has reviewed for horsekeeping in the residential zoning district, this, if you recall, this use was not associated with a primary dwelling, and that was one of the large concerns both of the neighbors and the board members, that without constant supervision, this would be less well maintained. And I believe that is part of why we're having this discussion, because as you can see in your staff report, most of your multi-paged staff report is with regard to a code enforcement visit that our Office of Construction Code Enforcement made, and it includes some of their citations and findings. With that, Mr. Chairman, we are recommending rejection of this 6-month extension.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Whitehead. Are there any questions of staff at this time? Hearing none, if we could make sure the applicant's on the line.
He is.
Okay, Mr. Romero, can you give your name and address for the record, and then let me swear you in?
Yes, sir. My name is Luis Gerardo Romero. I'm from 4200 Prescott Road.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, could you share with us why you think you need the extension?
Yes. Okay. The last time that that we met with you guys, we did get that 6-month extension. Now, that time was supposed to be used for us to find a new location to where we can relocate these horses at. Now, within that time, we're working with a real store guy. He's supposed to be looking up for properties and stuff for us and all that. Now, we did have a property that we were supposed to be moving into, but due to the virus, the owners of that property, they kind of put us on hold, and we kind of restarted working back on getting the contract signed and everything for that exactly about 3 weeks ago. So the only thing that we're looking for is just a little more time.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Romero. Skype was this program we used. So if you repeat whatever sentence you were in the middle of about 20 seconds ago, please repeat it.
Okay. Can you hear me well?
I can. Mr. Chairman,
yes.
Can you hear us? Okay, thank you.
I can. I lost you for about 20 seconds, though, like you were saying.
Yes.
Okay. Well, like I was saying is that all we're looking for is to apply to get an extended small amount of time due because of we did have a location to relocate within those 6 months that we got to be able to do that. But that was when the virus situation came along. Everything got kind of put on hold. They didn't want to have us come out there and look at properties and stuff like that till 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, that we actually, our realtor started actually having us be able to come out there and look at properties and starting to find something new now.
Okay. So how much time are you really realistically asking for?
My father is here with me, and he says that if he could get just those 6 months again, That way he could just make sure we do find the right place to go to. And everything, like he says, is the reason of the time it's taking so much longer. It's just due to the fact that we kind of have to set up appointments to go look at properties, and it all kind of sometimes they say that we can't come out there because of the virus, and most of those are like properties sold by owners. So that's kind of where the situation that's kind of holding us up is just that the everybody's just kind of a little bit scared. Everybody's scared of the virus, so we're kind of taking a lot of extra steps and stuff along the way to be able to get us to get these appointments in and stuff.
Okay. Mr. Whitehead, what is the real result if we say no? He'll be in violation of having the horses, and what happens then? Is that an environmental court issue? What happens?
Yes, sir, and I believe, and I can be corrected by Mr. Penzis or Mr. Romero in this, but I believe what brought Mr. Romero to us is perhaps a citation, a revised citation in environmental court, and then they deferred him to us. But if that's not the case, if he gets rejected here, we would refer the case to our code enforcement office and it go back to environmental court. And then the fact that, quote unquote, OPD has acted on it kind of eliminates one of the court's favorite outs. So then the court would hear the case and rule on it. Yes.
And they could then give him more time or whatever they see fit at that point to fix whatever the issue is. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Romero?
Mr. Chairman, John Jackson.
Yeah, Mr. Jackson.
I'm sorry I got cut off. I may have missed something that was already covered. However, did the applicant address the rationale for the addition of additional horses above and beyond what was approved?
No, we did not speak of that. Mr. Romero, could you talk about the number of horses there versus what was approved?
Did we talk about that the previous when I got those months there? Is that your question?
My question is
go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
My question is, why did the number of horses increase from what we approved prior?
Yes, I had an additional, what was that, 2 horses. That was when it was Inspector Harris that came out there, and he I walked them through the property and everything. And there was 2 additional horses there, and they were there for about a week. And Mr. Inspector Harris, he came out there. The reason that those 2 horses were there, we were renting stalls at another stall facility where they rent stalls and stuff for the horses, and they kind of shorted the staff there for the same reason of the virus. So what we did with those, we kind of brought them back, sold them in about a week. So we kind of really didn't have anywhere to have them. So we kind of got rid of them. They were only there for about a week. They were there.
I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, help me understand this is either staff 1 or 2. It's my understanding that when code went out there was 11 horses there, and we only approved, 5 or 6? Do we know how many was there 6 months ago?
Mr. Jackson, I am not sure if we've had codes inspect the site since January 14th. On that date, there were 11 horses on the site.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, sir.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Romero? All right. Hearing none, we can move to the opposition. Mr. Whitehead, can you let us know who's on the line?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We have Philip Looney. Mr. Looney, you're on the line.
Good afternoon, Mr. Looney. Can you give your name and address for the record?
Mr. Looney? Mr. Looney, we've unmuted you, but you may have also muted your phone. So if you can hear us, we can't hear you.
Okay, yes, I was on mute.
Oh,
okay, there you go.
Mr. Looney, could you give your name and address for the record for us?
4238 Prescott.
Okay. And go ahead and state your name as well.
Philip Looney.
All right. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. Go ahead and tell us what you have to say.
Well, I live next door, and I'm kind of downhill of them. And on the proposed site, it's not showing where they're fenced in. And where they're fenced in is right here by my backyard. So all of that, the feces and all of that, just every time it rains, it's running right downhill on top of me. And that's pretty much what I have to say. There's a lot of animals over there. Y'all seen that.
Gotcha. Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Looney? All right. Hearing none, thank you for joining us today, Mr. Looney. With that, yeah, absolutely. We have some time for rebuttal. I think I have about 5 minutes if you need it, Mr. Romero.
Well, I do have to say, I mean, the property and the land there is our property. Is not level to his property. Our property is a lot higher than what his property is, and I mean, if for water to come down there, or I'm not sure what kind of fee he's talking about, because everything is well organized over there. And I mean, if it rains and water seems to find its way to his property, that's something that has to be. It's the land. It's the it's the ground. That has nothing to do with whether we're doing something right or wrong. I mean, even if we're not there, that will continue to be going on because, like I said, our property it's on a higher level of dirt than their property. And what we're doing here is we're not trying to be there for too long. We're just really just trying to get some help, and we are looking to move out of there because this is like you guys said, the third time that we do meet, and we just kind of want to have them somewhere where they can, we don't have to have any issues with anyone or anything like that. But then again, we want to have them somewhere that's livable for them. And basically, that's all I'm asking for, sir. Just a little bit more time where we can just get some find a new location to relocate.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Romero?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Romero. Oh. I think we may have the same question in mind. Well, I was going to ask Mr. Romero, how many horses do you have on the site right now?
Right now, I have 8.
Okay.
Chairman John Jackson,
is that your question? Go ahead, sir.
No, sir. I have another one. Chris, my question to you is, this has been an ongoing process ever since, 2016? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So that's 4 years. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'll elaborate on that, Mr. Romero. I'm just really having a tough time with this. I understand understand that COVID hit. I'm in the real estate world, and it didn't slow down. People were buying and selling and doing stuff just about like any other year. So there should have been time to do stuff for somebody. If you wanted to do something, I think you could do something. And so I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that I'm not very inclined to give you any sort of a. I think anytime I get you is just going to give you 6 more months, and we'll see you in 6 months when something else happens. I think you're just going to have to do it. So that's just my comment. If you can respond to that if you'd like to, and then or we can just discuss.
Yes, sir. I understand what you're saying.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Romero? All right. Hearing none, I want to see if there is a motion to approve BOA 20-80 as conditioned by staff.
John Jackson, so moved.
Is there a second? Anyone? Second?
Second.
Second.
Scurlock.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this case before we vote to either approve or disapprove?
Mr. Chairman, John Jackson.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'm in agreement with you. I think 4 years is enough time to move just about almost anything, especially a few horses. And, I'm all for giving people the benefit of the doubt, but 4 years to move some animals off a piece of property that's affecting the neighborhood, it really shouldn't have been there in the beginning. I think it's more than ample time. And I just don't feel like that this should be granted very simply. I just think, if he could move them tomorrow, if we could force him to do that, that should be what we do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Any other comments? All right. Hearing none, I assume you guys... Oh, Ms. Scurlock, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. This is Portia Scurlock speaking. I agree with the other two board members. I remember this case in that this was a therapy horse property, and I don't think there was an intent to have the right number of horses from the beginning, but it's neither here nor there. It's 4 years later, and I'm in agreement.
Okay. Thank you, Portia. Any other comments? Hearing none, I assume y'all are ready to vote. Mr. Whitehead, will you give us a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Jackson?
No.
Mr. Malazri?
No.
Ms. Baker?
No.
Ms. Scurlock? Ms. Scurlock? Mr. Claybrook?
No.
Mr. Chairman?
No.
And Ms. Scurlock?
No.
Okay. I have 5. Thank you. 6 no's.
6 no's. Okay, the motion fails. Mr. Romero, best of luck. Get those things moved as quickly as possible, and I'm sure the process won't go very bad for you in environmental court if you can get that done. Mr. Whitehead, do we have any other announcements for today?
No, sir.
All right, with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Okay. Thank you. Good job, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank y'all.